So I'm finding all this out fucking 2 days before I graduate rehab, right? Like, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to get out there. And then I find out that I'm facing 32 counts of forgery, identity theft, and theft by unlawful taking, which was a minimum of 7 years in prison. And that my car is most likely getting repossessed. So...
Welcome to the show, Abby.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad Tiffany messaged me and said, "You got to talk to my friend Abby. She's got a story to tell." And I said,
Oh,
"Send her my way." Because anybody that Tiff says that about, I know it's a story. Because that's somebody with a story that says
yeah,
somebody's got
exactly.
a story.
You know you're on the same page with
Yeah.
her when she. No, it's so true, and her story is an inspiring one. She's
Yeah.
killing it. She's saying things that she's
So
talking
proud
about
of
things
her.
people don't talk about a lot. So I love it. I
Yeah.
love watching her grow.
There's somebody, local, and they, were talking to me about addiction, and they trying to stop, fentanyl, and, and they come to my meetings, and they started to open up a little bit, and they're like, "I'm completely alone. I'm the only one this has happened to." And as soon as she started opening up, I was like, "This sounds familiar." Boom, Katie TikTok. Boom, Tiff TikTok. Boom, boom, boom. And she's like, "Oh my God," and got really emotional because she wasn't alone.
Right.
And
It's
I
really.
told both of them, and they're like, "Yeah, tell her to add me and tell her to message me whenever," because like spot
Oh,
on, same.
that's amazing.
So, welcome. Well, I already said welcome. So, what is your sobriety date?
So I go all the way back. It's been 4 years off of my drug of choice. I am abstinent from all mind altering substances. So April of 2017 is the last time I was in rehab. Been sober ever since. Was not the first time, second time, or third time I had been to treatment. But there was a lot of things about that last time that were different that I think were like key points of why I am still sober today and how I
What was
became
the exact date?
the 14th.
Okay. I went in my first rehab April 25th, 2018.
Oh,
So
okay.
almost exactly a year later, I was doing my first stint in
Oh, that's cool.
first and only, knock on some wood over here.
I
You
know,
know,
right?
I did have a relapse, but it wasn't like a gnarly one where I needed rehab. It was a relapse with drinking, and I didn't go
You
overboard
were
at
able to.
all.
Yeah, I've been there. I've
I,
been there.
w- I was so, even then, I was like fucked in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to work the steps every day still because I think the
Yeah,
steps are so important. So I think because I was working the steps, I was constantly checking myself and doing it, it's step 10. If you're
yep,
familiar with them, I was
yep.
constantly doing
It
a
saved
step
my life.
10, and I never went overboard. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't like, drink and drive or hurt anybody or hurt myself. It,
Right.
it stopped eventually because I woke up hungover,
Okay.
and I woke up hungover and I realized I drank a bottle of Jack. And then it was like, oh, yeah, this is what I don't want, the
Yeah.
hangovers. And
Yes.
then it was February 29th. And I'm like, leap day is a perfect sober date.
There you.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
my wife and I quit that day. And it's been
Oh,
almost
did
2
you
years.
both quit at the same time? Well,
Yep.
good for you guys. That's really really cool. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things actually was following an actual program, doing it all though, right? Like not picking and choosing what I wanted to do. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask this person to be my sponsor, but I'm not gonna call her ever, or I'm gonna go to meetings and I'm not gonna work the steps. I have done so much of that. I've tried a faith-based program. I did it all. And the very last thing I attempted was to work the program the way they tell us to work it here in my hometown, ironically. So those two things, because I did a lot of running back and forth from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to California.
Me too.
Did you?
I was in Culver City.
Okay, I was in Orange County.
Okay. I
When
have friends that work in rehab in Orange County.
yeah, I worked in rehab in Orange County for a long time, actually.
Probably know
Um,
them.
it's
They
interesting.
would probably been on this. They were on this show.
I very well could know them. I know so many people in the rooms in
Oh my God.
in Orange
How
County.
much different? How much different is Southern California meetings from Pennsylvania?
Well,
Because like
that's
when I came back, I was in Hershey, and it was culture shock for me because like I
well,
was
that was
used
a
to
big
AA
learner
there.
for me. Yeah, I gained all these tools in California, right? And I knew what I was supposed to do. I wasn't necessarily doing it, all of it, right? And so that was a big issue for me was I was learning how to get sober in Orange County, which is beautiful. It's fun. It's pretty. It's a great place. But the issue was I wasn't learning how to handle family, right? Or toxic people, or I have a daughter. She just turned 7 on the 5th of January, but At this time, she was really young, and I wasn't learning any of the tools that I was going to need long term, as my end goal was to return to Pittsburgh, right? So I'm doing the damn thing out there. I came home. I don't think I made it a week. I'm serious. I mean, I was sober out there for over a year, and
And
just
killing it
about
and thriving, right?
thriving.
Like thriving.
Yeah, yeah. And then I came home and moved in with my parents, which I've learned that I can't do. I love them both to death, but my mom and I, we can't, especially as me being a mother, right? Because then she's kind of stepping on my toes, and there's this like, well, she's been helping so much when I'm gone. Like, do I have the right to say this or that? And she wasn't really letting me parent at all. And so we were just butting heads, and I couldn't stand it. And I'll never forget the day I told them I was going to a meeting, and I was doing the total opposite from going to a meeting. And that just started a long road of more wreckage and pain. And yeah, I mean, we can get more into that.
Oh, we
That's
will.
kind of the end of my story and how I ended up,
I like to
getting
jump
sober.
around like Tarantino. You start in the middle and then you go
That's
all
how
over.
I am. I'm not when I made a joke. I actually made a video on my TikTok about this one time. When you go to Impatient and you got to do you have to do your intake, right? And they're asking you dates and times and when did you first start smoking weed and when did you, and I'm like, lady, the whole thing is a blur. Like 10 years, I do not know the timeline of a single thing. And I always make jokes about it because I'm like, that was always the worst part for me was the intakes. I'm like, I couldn't tell you a timeline to save my life.
Yeah.
Even with like, and I've had a lot of sobriety days, and yeah. So even today, I'm like, oh.
I remember my intake. I was just like, it's everything except for heroin, crack, and meth. Just mark me down. Just mark me down. Just mark it down.
It's easier to say what you haven't done. I'm the same way. Same thing. I'll tell you what I didn't do.
Yeah, just check off the rest. I promise you it's there.
Exactly. I know. Oh my God.
So have you always been from Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I was born here, grew up here. I was here up until,
Such a
the
beautiful
first
city.
time that my family didn't recommend, gave me an ultimatum that I needed to go to treatment. And at first it was.
Word. It was a cute word you did there. I mean,
I
like they
know,
recommended.
I tried to be. I caught myself. Yeah, no, it was like you can't be in our lives if you don't go. And so at first it was that I'll show them and I'll be so successful. And then when I can prove them wrong, I won't even speak to them the day that, I thought I was going to seriously prove them wrong and I was going to thrive. I think it took a month and I called my mom and I'll never forget that morning. I woke up, same thing, very hungover, very sick. And at this point, I still hadn't really known what it was like to withdraw, actually. And so I was feeling like shit. A lot of it was mentally super depressed, just a lot of mental health stuff, which I've dealt with a lot of my life, even before drugs. And I'll never forget that morning calling her and telling her that she was right. I gave it and I set the ego and pride aside and I told her I needed help. But of course, me being me, I wanted to go to California. I had never been. I'd always wanted to go. And I made it about me, which I didn't realize at the time, but that's what I was doing. And I don't regret it. I learned a lot, but I ended up having to learn how to get sober all over again here in Pittsburgh. And that was the final time I went and, what led me to be sober to this day. But it took a lot of jumping back and forth across the country. And I finally learned that wherever you go, there you are.
I moved 30 times in 15 years.
Did you?
And I'm talking not even like small moves. There was a bunch of small moves, but there was also to Massachusetts, to Jersey to Massachusetts, back and forth. I went to North Carolina for a year after my fiance died.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Wow.
She was really sick. She was bipolar and schizophrenic. So.
Oh, that's hard.
Suicide sucks, and mental health wasn't talked about nearly as much as it is today in 2015 when it happened.
It's so true. That's
like it's only 6-7 years ago, but yet, she was losing childhood friends because they didn't know how to deal with her.
Oh, that's horrible.
I hate that word "deal." That's why I put it in, with the hair quotes, because like you live with, you don't deal with.
Yes.
And we were childhood best friends, so. But
okay.
I learned how to deal with grief now in sobriety because I definitely couldn't deal with that shit being, an alcoholic drug addict.
Right.
So let's really rewind your story
Yeah.
It started in Pittsburgh. When did your parents are still together to this day? It sounds like
They are. They are.
so are
Yeah.
mine. So we got that in common.
Awesome.
Now brothers and sisters.
I do. I have two. I have a brother and a sister. They're both
Are you,
older. So I'm the baby.
you're the baby. It's always
Mhm.
the oldest or the baby. The middle child is always just like skirting by
I
addiction.
know. Just
But in middle child syndrome, I think is their addiction.
exactly. There you go. It's that
Everything
in
just
itself.
yeah. But so you're the baby, and what's the age differences? I'm just curious.
So there's a pretty big age difference, or at least it always felt that way to me. The older I get, the more I realize it's not as big as I always felt that it was in my head. When we were younger, we were a lot closer. As we got older, is kind of when things changed. But I'm 27. My brother's 31, and my sister's 33.
Oh, that's
So
pretty similar. It's pretty similar to my situation. I'm 9 years older than my baby sister, and I'm
Okay.
3 years older than my younger brother.
Oh, that is
Um,
similar.
yeah, it's pretty similar. And
Wow.
we're all really close now, but we weren't then because
Okay.
I was separating myself from
Yeah.
everybody.
Right.
I started drinking at 11.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
just to be cool. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we thought we were like the greasers. We watch Outsiders and drink. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. You were
But in sixth grade is when I drank alcoholically for the first time because a kid I knew was, died. Was the first person that died in my life, and I literally said to my best friend, like, "Oh, well, we can drink and we'll feel better."
right. You are
So
ready.
yep, and
Wow.
there it is. I didn't know that
Wow.
then, but looking back with doing the steps, when you're you find it. When did
Yeah.
you first start drinking?
High school. I wasn't super, super young. I'd probably say, you know what? No, it was the summer before freshman year of high school. I remember the exact time and where I was and how it went down. Yeah, it was the summer before freshman year. So,
Parties, just regular old parties.
yep, the first time was actually at my best friend's house, my childhood best friend. It was at her home. It was just her, me, and her cousin. It was just the three of us, and it was the good old take. We were taking her mom's alcohol. I think
Wine coolers.
it was
Wine.
exactly. It was like
Strawberry
barefoot.
wine,
It was
daiquiri
like
wine.
white zin or something, and then when we would do it at my house, it was like scotch. We were filling up the bottle of scotch with water, thinking we're slick.
14-year-old girls, 15-year-old girls
Yeah.
drinking scotch like you're
Well,
like a
and
50-year-old
what? I
man.
swear to God, I tell people, I seriously think that's what made me. So just to fast forward for a second, like we go to family dinners. I always talk about this with just alcoholism and just like you said, looking back, you notice things. When I turned 21, and at that point, everybody in the family at like birthdays and things like that, we all could drink. Me, my siblings, my parents, right? Everybody would get a glass of red wine. That was everybody's thing. My mom, my sister, and my brother. My dad would always get Jameson on the rocks or some nice fancy scotch, whatever. For whatever reason, I always wanted Jameson on the rocks like my dad. I always wanted, like, in my mind, I don't know why, I still don't know, but I always wanted to like prove to him that I could drink like he could. And my dad's not an alcoholic. He doesn't have any alcoholic tendencies. I mean, he drinks like a few times a month, maybe.
Same as
But
my parents.
yeah, like I always felt the need to show him that I could drink like he could. Like I could drink it straight, And my dad, I will never forget, at dinner one night, he looked at me and he said, why can't you just have a glass of wine like the rest of them? And it was one of those moments that it didn't stand out to me until after I realized I was an alcoholic. But yeah, I mean, I always had to do the most. And so my friends back in high school, they'd always say, how can you drink that stuff? Whether it was Jose Cuervo or whatever. And that's what I'd always say. I'm like, well, I was raised on, whatever my dad had in the bar in the basement, So whatever he was drinking is what we were drinking, because that's what we could get our hands on.
That's how I started. My first drink was Captain and Coke.
Yeah.
And because again, my parents they'll throw the party, but they're not drinkers.
Right. So it's
the basement would have just an overstock of liquor.
Exactly. Same with
and it wasn't like I've heard so many people tell me like, oh, I would, pour water into it to refill it so they wouldn't notice. I didn't have to do that because they didn't notice it, because the next time they had a party, they just bought new bottles and then just brought the old ones back up and just went through them quickly. Exactly. They weren't noticing that, because they weren't drinking them regularly to even notice. So, that was, and at 12 years old, I knew that shit. And we would oh my God. I remember the first time I drank Southern Comfort in like 7th grade.
SoCo.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Like the things that I know exactly. Like the parties and the shit we did. Like, I luckily for us, none of us. When I say us, I mean my friends and I. Like none of us would drink and drive. We lived in a small area in New Jersey, like 1 square mile town. We could walk everywhere, so we were always really responsible. I went to the hospital once when I was 16 for alcohol poisoning.
Oh, wow.
Apparently you're not supposed to drink a bottle of Bacardio in 10 minutes. I didn't know that. Lands
Well,
you in
then
the
that one
hospital.
the hard way, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
But I didn't get into like pills until I was 22.
okay.
That was because alcohol stopped working by then. It
Right.
it wasn't fun anymore. 21, I went so hard at the bars and everything, and this was 21 in 2007. When you were 21 in 2007, the bars were doing like quarter shot night, all that kind of shit, like really promoting. They can't even do that anymore because people like us ruined it for everybody, you know?
Exactly.
They- So when did you find other drugs, or are you always just an alcoholic?
No, so to be honest with you, alcohol ended up being kind of the least of what my issues were when things really. Now, of course,
It's a
alcohol,
very confusing thing though when that happens because then
it
we
is.
think like, well, alcohol wasn't the problem, it was the drugs.
It
And
started
then
with alcohol, and now I call myself an alcoholic. I choose an AA program. I like the way AA works, their steps. Now I'm not one of those people that's like, I can drink. I know better. I know that even if I could for a couple months, it's still going to lead to other. So I don't drink, but I didn't care. I could have cared less about alcohol in my active addiction. I mean, I never drank. I didn't care
neither
to.
did I. I only
Yeah.
time
So,
I did though, it was to keep up appearances at parties. If I
well,
was with
that's a good
family,
point.
if I was going to a family party, yeah, I would drink.
Sip on
I would
something.
sip on it, but make it look like I'm going through a lot. This way
Right.
they think I'm just drunk and not high.
Well, that's a good cover up. That's a good.
So that's the only time I really drank was when, it was like a setting with people that were drinking and I had to like not stand out that
Put
I
up a
wasn't,
front. That's a
you
good
know.
point. That's a good point. I was just kind of trying to think of if I ever did that, but when I think about it, I actually think I never even would go. Like I stopped going to parties or anywhere I was invited to. I don't even think I really did that because I just didn't. I just only wanted to hang out with people who were doing dope. I mean, it's just so. It's crazy when I think about it, but I
'Cause
think
you're
I went to
27 now, right?
27 now.
So you're
Yep.
born 95. So
94.
94.
94.
Okay. So, but still, okay. So when did you discover other things besides alcohol?
So, all right, this is interesting. So, um, I definitely, so yeah, alcohol absolutely caused issues in my life. Before I ever went to rehab, I did get a DUI. I have a photo actually of this too. This is a separate time from the DUI. I drove home, a 25-minute car ride. I drove home on a rim. Somehow made it home. Didn't get pulled over, didn't wreck, but drove home on a rim. I will never forget. I don't remember anything. Obviously, when I woke up the next day, my daughter's father woke me up and was like, come and check out what you did last night, because it was always something new, right? And I'll never forget going out and just seeing this like melted rim. But from that night, all I remember is seeing sparks flying up my window of the passenger side. Like I'm driving, and I'm looking, and I just see the sparks. Anyway, so alcohol was causing issues, right? Legally, mentally, all that. Now, I get pregnant with my daughter when I'm 19 with Bobby is her dad's name, and him and I had only been dating for 3 months. However, we had been best friends for about 7 years, so we had like a sturdy foundation
Yeah.
within our friendship. So I went through 9 months of pregnancy completely sober. What things, thank God I hadn't found anything else yet. Otherwise, I'm sure that would have been a lot harder. So I didn't drink. I went through 9 months of pregnancy. I had my daughter. I was healthy. She was healthy. Everything was great. And then postpartum depression hit. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. And that's why it's so interesting, when you talk about the difference from 2015 to even today, the way people talk about things, whether it be on social media or not. I had no idea what postpartum depression was. I didn't know it was common. I wasn't like reaching out to people about it for support, but I did call a therapist and I did go see a doctor. And the only thing they did for me, they sent me home with a bottle of Xanax. I saw the therapist, I talked to a psychologist, and they prescribed me benzos, which now makes me irate, right? But
Yeah,
at the
because
time,
in 2014 they sent my wife into 72-hour hold when she was postpartum. But
really?
they didn't give her Xanax. I think they gave her like Ativan, which is like
Okay,
fucking M&Ms
right.
comparatively.
Basically,
We weren't together then, so I don't know, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But from what
yeah.
she's told me, like I know for sure they didn't give her Xanax, and I'm pretty sure it was like a
Right,
low level thing, but she got put on a hold with hers. So I know all about, I've heard all about, that from her.
right,
No,
right.
but they send you home with Xanax, and now you're a person that already likes the effects of alcohol.
Yep. I like anything that's going to alter the way I think or the way I feel inside. And so it took probably not even well, definitely not even a month, because I know for a fact I
You
ran out of
ran
that
out of that
first
script.
script early. This is the insanity that they talk about in AA, right? So here's an example for you. This was in the beginning before I found opiates, which is really when my life went downhill. And I'll never forget one time. And so at this point, right, I hadn't known any like dealers or nothing, right? And mind you, my daughter's father has never touched a drug. And the main reason being, this is also interesting, he comes from a long line of addicts and alcoholics. His father passed away of an overdose just a few years ago. The he A long line of addicts and alcoholics. And so Bobby saw that and, you know, consciously made a decision that that's not how he wanted his life to go. I come from, a really good family, no addicts or alcoholics that I know of. And then look, you compare, it's crazy, it's not always generational. A lot of the time it is, but with us, it was actually the opposite. So when I got that prescription, he was the first and the only person in my life to say, Abby, this isn't good. Like, you can't take these. And I'm looking at him like he's nuts because they were given to me by a doctor.
You're not a doctor, bro.
Yeah, what do you know? You come from a bunch of addicts and alcoholics. You're just scared because of the way you grew up. Don't project that onto me, right? Is the way I'm looking at it. I have a mom who's a doctor. Now, my mom has her PhD, but she teaches undergrad nursing at a university here in Pittsburgh. She actually just retired a few months ago. But so my mom's a doctor. She's all for medicine. And then I have him telling me, no, these are terrible. So anyway, I'm eating them to sleep, to get out of bed, to get ready for work. I can't go walk into my job until I take a few. I couldn't clean, do laundry, cook. It got
What
to
did
the
you
point
do
where
for work?
I without them. So at this point in time, I graduated beauty school pregnant, and I passed my state boards pregnant. So I got my first salon job pregnant. Did all of that while I was carrying my daughter. And then so when I had her, I was working at a hair salon when
Were
I
you
got
like dipping out, cutting hair at all?
no.
Like,
So here's the good thing, because I was so new in the industry, because I was working in crazy, crazy high-end hair salons here in Pittsburgh, in like the Shady Side area, Squirrel Hill. It's just like a lot of uptight. Like I used to do Mac Miller's mom's hair. Um, she made me cry a couple times, but it
I'm
was a
sure.
lot of like just people with money. And so I was an assistant for the longest time. So I would do touch-ups, shampoos, and actually that's why I got out of the industry, because I was stuck assisting for so long that I started to lose my talent. I wasn't getting any practice. So then I started to feel I had no confidence within my cutting skills, and that's a whole different story. But so I don't do hair anymore. I still keep up with my license just because it's something to have, and I'll do like weddings or freelance things here and there, but I don't do hair anymore. So that's a hard industry as it is. And then dealing with the type of clients that I was dealing with and my boss, I couldn't go in there without the benzos. So I mean, that was a big part of, I think, what got me addicted to them, besides like the postpartum depression and it being in my blood. But
I was gonna say, and the actual effects that it was producing itself.
yeah,
I mean,
either way,
let's
I
be.
would have been
A lot
sick.
of us are trying to fill voids, whether
Facts.
we know we have voids or not. I didn't know
Yeah,
I
it could
had
be
any
subconscious.
voids.
It could totally be
And
subconscious.
I'm still finding them at like
Oh,
literally.
oh, same.
Was it Christmas? We were hanging out and like my wife, and you can smoke. People smoke cigarettes on my show.
Okay.
So don't feel bad about it. So like we're hanging out with like, her stepson's like 18, and we're talking, and he's not really into sports, and I was realizing that I'd lost my love for sports when I was 11. I was obsessed with playing sports, but around 11 is when I stopped, is when I first
Interesting.
realized like I'm not going to go pro. And that's when I started seeing the difference in the kids that were way more athletic than I was.
Okay.
And it wasn't filling that void anymore. I still
That's the age you
played.
started drinking, right? 11?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I didn't realize that until like 2-3 weeks ago.
I was going to say, it's funny. I come up with, there's still so much stuff I don't know. I mean,
Which is why I say recovering. That's why I say recovering and not recovered. I totally respect the people that want to say recovered.
You know
I understand why you do. I understand why you say it. I totally get that. It's in the book 17 times. I get that too. All for it. If you're that confident, I'm just recovering because I'm always doing something with something. Like I had 3 therapists in rehab because I wanted to fucking learn.
Yeah, you want to know more about yourself.
Yeah.
For me, saying I'm recovered for me is actually a red flag for me. And again, like you said, like I respect what anybody says. If somebody comes up to me and says they're recovered, I'm going to congratulate them. That's wonderful. But for me, actually, that's a red flag. And say, I mean, anything along those lines, saying I'm recovered or saying that I think, I'm no longer an alcoholic. And I know that through experience, right? Like thinking that I just had a girl, I just made a video about this. I had a girl in my comment section, and she was very kind and her intent was good, but she said, stop saying you're recovering. You are recovered. And it was like her intent was good and she was trying to be nice, but I used that comment and I made a video to explain exactly what we're discussing, because there is still so much that I have to learn. And I said in the video, I will fight this for the rest of my life, right? And that might sound horrible to other people, or difficult to other people. But as we know, there are good days and there are bad days. But I have to make a conscious decision every morning when I wake up. Am I going to take a program with me for the day, or am I going to leave it on the kitchen table? And some days I do leave it on the kitchen table. And by the end of the day, I realize that I did. It's not.
You realize it when you're yelling at the person in traffic that cuts you off, and you're like,
when I'm going 80 miles an hour driving with my knees, like somebody off. Yeah, with my like Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets in my one hand. Literally, yeah, like restless, irritable, discontent, and that is always how I know. Same with my daughter. Maybe I don't have as much patience, and that's actually a big one with my daughter. My parenting, I notice if I need to like check myself. Because a lot of the time, that's like a big thing I've learned as a parent. It's really not my daughter's behavior that determines how our day's going to go. It's actually
This
mine.
episode is sponsored by MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center Association. We are in our meeting center where we do all these meetings for mental health and addiction. I can do this podcast anywhere. I can do this at home. I can do this in a closet. I can do this in a basement. It doesn't matter. All I need is somebody else to talk to about addiction and recovery. What I can't do from anywhere is help people with their addiction and their mental health problems. So if you can help out, we do have a Venmo, we have a Cash App, we have a PayPal, we have an address you can send a check to, and all the money that gets donated goes towards rent, goes towards keeping the lights on, and goes towards keeping the internet on. So please, if you can give $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. Anything you can is so appreciated. And if you are a local business, if you're a national business, whatever, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, you can reach out to me and we can talk about how you can be a sponsor. But I'll let you get back to the episode.
So now you get these benzos, you're going through them quickly, right?
Very much so.
I'm trying to present this in the right way. What happens? Because you had to have been like with a friend, or something that was like, oh, you could sell them, and then the light bulb went off, and then all of a sudden you met a dealer, and then that dealer said, well, try these.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I get really distracted really easily. What you reminded me of what I was going to say, and that I must have went somewhere else. But so the first time I ran out of the script and I needed more, my solution, as somebody, like I said, who didn't know any other way, I call the pharmacy and I tell them, this is the good old, somebody stole my purse. Well, the pharmacy tells me that I can't get another prescription unless I actually file a police report. So what do I do but throw my purse into the trunk of my car and call the police and tell them that my purse was stolen because I needed this police report. And a benzo, opiate withdrawals, you feel like you're dying, but benzos,
you can literally die.
You can die. Yeah.
You can literally die.
You can literally die. And I didn't know this at the time. I just knew that I did not feel good, and I was willing to go to any length.
I had a gnarly seizure from it.
it's scary. It really is. Even working in treatment, working in detox, I've seen
Yep.
some very scary things. So anyway, so I do that right after that whole incident. I'm like, I can't do that once a month. Like that's not gonna work. So yeah, and this kind of just
They're
happened.
gonna catch on.
Yeah, they're gonna catch on. So this didn't really happen. This wasn't like a conscious decision, like I need to get something else. This kind of just happened naturally. I was getting my own script. I had a really good friend that I'd grown up with who was able to get them from her mother's medicine cabinet. And so I would call her if I needed some. But then I had another friend who her boyfriend was into Percocet. So I'll never forget the first time she gave me a Perc 10. She got it. She said, you got to try this, whatever. So yeah, it was a friend. So it was a Perc 10 and I swallowed it. Again, I wasn't quite there yet. I didn't know other ways to do it. So I just ate it. Mind you, I had been on benzos, but I had never touched an opiate. So I swallow a whole Perc 10 right before I'm going, and I can say this because she remembers this too. I was going dress shopping with my mother for her mother of the bride dress for my sister's upcoming wedding. So before we go, we went out to lunch, or it was dinner, I guess. And I spilled the coffee in my lap. I hit my face off the table, and I'm telling my mom that I'm tired. I'm telling her I'm just tired, So this was a huge red flag to my mom, right? She knew that. I mean, my mom's naive, but
she's not dumb.
She's not dumb. And this one was a little too hard to fake. I'm sorry. I'm going to let my dog out while we're talking because she's going to keep ringing that bell.
Is that what that is? That's adorable.
Yep. Just a little bell on the doorknob that she rings. So that was my first experience with a Perc. And that was the beginning of it all. So, to fast forward, and I know this is the same with a lot of opiate users. And
how fast did you find 30s instead?
Probably within the same week.
And then how fast were you sniffing them that day?
So that day, but here's what's interesting. So I'm doing the 30s. I quickly started sniffing them. And within a month I had probably lost. I was living with some random dude who I didn't even like, but I needed somewhere to live. Bobby, my daughter's dad, wasn't talking to me. My parents weren't speaking to me. This was around the time where they were giving me that ultimatum, you need help. And I'm saying, no, I don't. So yeah, around here at least, I could not get a 30 for under $40. I could not get one 30 I could not get for under $40. Sometimes I would pay $45. So it was clearly an expensive habit. So I say, I end up breaking down and telling my mom I need to go to rehab. So I go to California. The first time I go to inpatient, I am in Palm Springs in the desert. And it was a co-ed inpatient. It was a co-ed detox. After you finish detoxing, it would then go into like 30 days women and the men were over here. So it was two separate. It's called Michael's house. A lot of people, it's a pretty common one out there. But I get there and everybody's dope sick, right? Like everybody's hurting bad. And like I told you earlier, I had no idea what it was like to be sick yet at this point. So I'm not, first thing in my mind, I don't belong here, right? I'm not an addict. I am not like these people. I am not sick off drugs. I feel stupid. I can't believe my parents made me do this. So because of that, I feel like looking back that whole time,
you related out.
I was picking out all the differences. I wasn't looking at the similarities. I'm looking at all these reasons why I don't belong here and why I'm not an addict. So I'm not getting I'm not learning. I'm not gaining any knowledge on, what's going on in my brain.
No, because you shut off as soon as you hear a speaker, as soon as the speaker says, I'm John, I'm an alcoholic, and then they go, okay, well, I'm not an alcoholic, so I'm not going to listen to anything he says.
Exactly. I was not hearing it, and I was not having it. So then, I get out of inpatient, and they're talking about all of these, outpatient facilities where you can live in sober living and go to IOP. So I end up going to IOP in South Orange County. That's what led me to Orange County. A girl that I'd gotten very close with in inpatient, her and I went to the same one. And so here's where it gets interesting. I was in outpatient for about a month. Me and the girl that I had went there with from inpatient, we were hanging out all the time, of course. And then there was this kid I started talking to, this guy, right? Too many distractions around me. Well, we decide one day, I can't even tell you how it happened. We both skipped outpatient that day. This is what's weird. We were both working on step work. We were sitting outside at a table by the pool, because the freaking sober livings out there are these like mansions. We're sitting out there by the pool doing step work, and we somehow are talking enough in a certain way that we decide we want to get high. And she was an IV heroin user. I was there experiencing some 30s, never been dope sick, clearly wasn't taking them enough to be dope sick. So there's that, right? So long story short, I was introduced to not only heroin, but IV heroin use in outpatient rehab.
And also California has different heroin than
That's
Pennsylvania.
why I IV. That's exactly why I used it IV. So I actually, I was like, I'm not doing this. I didn't want to use the needle. I was like, I just want to snort it. So they're like, I don't want to get too in detail, but they're like giving me this basically water, this liquid substance that they have on a spoon. And I'm literally trying to snort this, which snorting any type of water, it doesn't go well, right? It's not supposed to go up your nose. It didn't feel right.
So, they handed the spoon.
Yeah. So I got frustrated. I also didn't want to waste the product. So I said, you know what? Screw it. Go ahead, so that was my first time using heroin and using it that way. So that's a lot all at once, right? And it was good. It was great. It felt really great. And so that was that started.
How old is Abby? How old is Abby this time?
Oh, good question.
2012.
23.
Okay.
This was, well, my daughter. So I had my daughter in 2015.
Oh, that's right. So it was after that.
One. So this was, well, the first time I ever went to rehab was 2016. So
okay.
Yeah, it was. So I had to have been like, I want to say 22. I was 22 because I was sober when I turned 23. So I was 22 at this time. Yeah. So yeah, that but here's, the thing is, after that I got sober again. Like I didn't go into this whole big relapse, right?
You didn't go on a run.
Didn't go on a run. Did that, got caught, so me and that girl had to be separated. They literally sent her to another treatment center, and she ended up in like Napa Valley. She ended up somewhere totally different, a whole separate city. And so did the kid. We all got removed from each other. But here's the thing. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was obsessive. So for however long I stayed sober for that amount of time, the next relapse would have been with that, right? Because it was cheaper. I knew how good it felt. So yeah, I don't know. Fast forward, at some point I relapsed again. Again
in California.
In California.
Because you were in sober living.
Yeah, California was a lot of on and off sober and relapsing. So I ended up, I was.
You know what's tough about LA that people don't know about the sobriety and the recovery is there's also a ton of body brokerage.
It's terrible. It's
body for anybody who doesn't know, body brokers are people that they take people like Abby and I. They're like, hey, you're struggling, you're an addict. We're gonna get you into treatment, but first you got to get high so you can fail a drug test. We'll pay you $2,500 when you get out, and then no one ever gets paid.
We will provide you the substances. We will give you the money if you go to the center because they make so much off of it.
They make so much. Yep. Yeah, like I know a guy that was homeless that was living for like years in rehab just by getting out, going down to Skid Row, and then got high, go to another treatment, and then piss dirty, and then boom, he's in again.
All. Yeah, they will. They'll just go drive down Skid Row and pick them up.
Yep.
I mean, and they're living in tents. They're going to take the money. They're going to go sleep in a nice bed for a couple of nights and get some money. And
yep.
Yeah, it's really sad, and that is huge. California and Florida, I always warn people, it's scary. Yeah. I've never been a victim of it, but I've seen it so much. And then once I started working in the treatment world, I was more so I ran a detox center. So I ended up getting my RAD T1 certification, which is just Registered Alcohol and Drug Technician level 1. Just some classes and some courses you do online, and it certifies you so that you're able to actually, monitor patients who are withdrawing and things like that. And it's, easier to get better paying jobs and treatment, things like that. So I ran a detox center in Orange County. It was called the House of the Rising Sun. They called it Thor as the acronym. And my best friend, Charlie, who God rest his soul, passed away in 2020, actually not even to addiction, on a motorcycle. He wrecked. Him and I were like this team. So we were running a sober living together, right? So we were living for free in this, again, mansion in San Juan Capistrano. We're running it, so we're getting free rent, and then we're working in their detox center, which was just about 10 minutes down the road in San Clemente, which is kind of close to San Diego. It's like the most south that Orange County gets. So I'm running the detox. So he did all the insurance. So he would bring the clients in. He did all the marketing, but he wasn't a body broker. But because I was so close with him and because of what he did, he knew so much about the body broking world. And that's kind of where I learned about all of that and what they do. And he knew a lot about that. And he would always kind of differentiate for me, like what a marketing director does and what a body broker does. Right. And of course, the intent and the morals is the number one difference, but also like what to look for. And
yeah, I mean,
like
just
that.
somebody like a marketing, like somebody that's getting you in, they're not getting paid a big bonus every time they get. The guy I called, Justin, I still remember this conversation to this day because I called at 8 p.m. on a Saturday to find a rehab at 31 years old for the first time. And this dude answered at 5 p.m. on a Saturday and talked to me for 2 hours like nobody else had ever talked to me. And I was on a plane 4 days later, and he was just doing his job. He didn't get a bonus. That was his job, was to answer
Exactly.
the phone.
That was Charlie. Yep. It was a thing. And that's what's so crazy. So, and then to fast forward. So obviously I was sober for a while out there. Here was my biggest struggle, right?
You weren't working a program. I didn't hear anything about a program. You were just
not at all
working in detox. All you're doing is seeing people come in sick as hell.
Well, so here's the thing too, so I'm living in a sober living when we're working in a detox. So obviously there's a little bit of accountability there. However, the people I was working for, the House of the Rising Sun, they were the faith-based program that I discussed earlier. So it wasn't Monday, Wednesday, Friday, hop in the van, we're going to a meeting. It was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, hop in the van, we're going to like praise, right? So it was because that's what opened the doors for me to those types of churches. And I grew up in a very traditional Christian Catholic kneel, sit, stand. And so it was cool to see all the worship, and it was helpful for me. It built a really strong relationship with God for me, which down the road was super helpful when I did end up working the steps. But as you know, as somebody who's like a hardcore addict, alcoholic, it's not enough, right? Like just having faith, it's not enough. You need a program. And so, there was no program. I wasn't working any steps. I didn't have a sponsor, but I was sober and I was winging it. Now things started to get really good. I'm making good money. I don't have to pay rent. I buy a car out there. So my life is looking really great. Well, as grateful as I was and as happy as I was, there was this other side of me that was super upset and depressed because I'm like, well, why? I would always ask God, like, why? My daughter's all the way in Pittsburgh, and I had felt this, like, I almost wanted to stay in California. Like, I didn't want to come home, but I had a child that I wanted to raise and be there for, and I couldn't bring her out to California for obvious reasons, and that wouldn't have been good. So I just didn't get it. I couldn't understand what my path was. Why were things happening this way? And so there was always that like doubt in my mind, like, well, what's the point? My end game was to get back home and be there for my child and be a sober, good mother. And I couldn't do that across the country. And so I was coming home for holidays, birthdays. I was still seeing her. I was FaceTiming her all the time and things like that. But I always had that doubt in my mind. So finally, fast forward, I decided it was time to move home. I thought that I had enough like sobriety under my belt. I was successful. I was doing the
What year is it?
I wanted to say it, and I couldn't. I'm trying to think. So put it this way: the last time, it couldn't even have been.
Well, I mean, you had to have spent a year there at least.
Well, I did, but I went to rehab here in Pittsburgh in 2017. That's the thing. So gotcha. I don't know if it was that. It was the same year. So I guess it was. I think I came home in 2017. My way to look, I always look at photos for timeline. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like on Facebook. Because my dad.
See, for me, as I moved so much, I'm like, where was I living at the time?
It's so hard for me. Yeah, chronologically and dates, I'm so bad at this. Yeah. And also, in my mind, things feel like years and years and years. But then when I actually look at dates on paper, I'm like, oh, well, that couldn't have been. So yeah, I was most definitely in California for at least a year, but it had to have been, I'm pretty sure it was 2017. I
Okay,
think
well,
it was
let's
like
say you get home to Pittsburgh. How fast do you relapse and start getting high
almost
again?
immediately, because I'll tell you this. So my dad, I had bought a car in California, and my dad flew out to LAX to drive across the country with me, right? So it was amazing. You know, we did the Grand Canyon, we did Sonoma, we stood on the corner of Winslow, Arizona, and listened to Take It Easy by the Beatles. I mean, some amazing memories, and I was sober for that stuff. But I got home, oh my God, not even a month. Not even a month I was using again. And it was the same, like I said earlier, it was just I came home, moved in with my parents. And by the way, there's a lot of stories in between this that I didn't touch on. I got a boyfriend out in California. We were like in love. My parents moved him to Pittsburgh with me. We were, oh yeah, there's a lot that I didn't mention, and these are all just little details, and it basically just falls into it's like the normal stuff, right? It's just like
Yeah.
I'm looking for all fill in these voids again, right? With men, whether it be, you know, love, sex, whatever. I'm just filling that void that alcohol and drugs were filling, but I don't have a program, right? So something needs to fill that void, and it wasn't anything healthy. So there was all of that. Him and I ended up relapsing. I go back to California.
Together?
Together, right? Exactly. But now when my dad and I drove across the country, this is the final time. This is when I moved back to Pittsburgh for good, and I've been here ever since. So all those details with my ex and all of those things, those were all before this. I just wanted to kind of like throw that in there. So there were multiple times that I went to Cali and came home, went to Cali, came home. I did that twice, that little. So this time I come home, no boyfriend, no nothing. And yeah, it took about a month, and I again moved back in with my parents, which you would think at this time I would learn, but I also didn't really have the finances to get my own place yet. So yeah, I'm living with my parents. I relapsed. Now I promised myself in this relapse that I would not touch heroin, right? I swore up and down I wasn't going to touch it. So I'm back on the 30s, which was an expensive habit. I think I was serving at PF Chang's at the time, and I couldn't afford it with that type of job. So now here's where things get crazier. I started stealing my parents' checkbooks, and I was writing out checks to myself, forging their handwriting. And I did this for a long time, long enough that the amount of money I ended up stealing, which I later found out, was sickening, right? It was sickening. About the amount of money that you blow or waste or use.
It's sickening. At the same time, I did exactly what I had to do in that moment to survive, and I won't take it back. That's how I live with it today, because that's all you can do is find ways to live with our past.
Yeah, like
so I live with it by saying to myself, well, if I didn't do it in that moment, I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, you're in survival mode. It's what you have to do. That's a great way to put it. I've actually never looked at it that way. And I'm a very optimistic, like glass half full gal, so I like that a lot. So yeah, I did this for a long time. So until the day, and you know, there was always that fear. Like every time my phone would ring and it was my dad, my heart would sink, because I knew it was gonna happen, right? And here's where the whole like addiction is or isn't a disease. Here's the thing. The entire time, and everybody relates to this that's an addict, I never fucking wanted to do this. From every moment I did it, from every check I wrote, I never wanted to do it. I didn't want to be using. I didn't want to be getting high. It just got to the point where I was simply using to not be sick. That was it. Like it wasn't fun anymore. There was,
feel like you feel right now, right? You were getting high enough to feel like
get out
you
of bed.
do right now, just to feel even again.
Exactly.
Like,
so like I hated
oh my
this.
God.
And yeah, and so my dad, every time my dad would call me, my heart would sink, and I'm like, is this the phone call? I knew it was gonna happen. And to any normal person, they're like, well, then why the hell didn't you stop? And that's where the addiction comes into play and the insanity that's involved in it. And so finally that day came. My dad calls me. And I answer, and here he was pumping gas and his card declined, which doesn't happen to my parents. And so he obviously knew something was up. So he immediately goes to the bank. Well, here, by the time he had called me, he had every printed out copy of every check I had ever forged. He had the total amount and all that. So he gives me an ultimatum: go to rehab or I'm pressing charges. So, of course, I choose rehab. I don't want to go to jail, right? So this would be the first time I ever went to rehab here in Pittsburgh. Now, I went to treatment in Washington County, but, you know, not even a half hour away from Pittsburgh. So the first time ever in Pennsylvania, I should say, I had ever gone to treatment here. So I go to Greenbrier Treatment Center because of the ultimatum. And so this was the first time in treatment where nobody was calling me. I had nobody to call. Nobody was writing me letters. Nobody was sending me toiletries. Every other time I'd been to treatment, in fact, in the very beginning, the first time I went to treatment, this is who my mother is. This is, I joke about this to this day. The very first time I ever went to treatment, I was getting cards from family members I didn't even fucking know. Cousins I didn't even know I had. And I was mad. It pissed me off, right? This isn't something that you go and you tell everybody about, but that's who my fucking mother is. So everybody knew where I was. I had my roommates would make fun of me. They'd laugh. We'd all laugh because I would have cards like all along the window sills. I mean, just so much shit. So anyway, for me, by this point, it was a huge change. Like I had nobody.
No
I had
one's
no
talking
money.
to Abby now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God forbid, right? I don't have a carton of cigarettes this time. Before, I was loaning people money. Here's some Reese cups.
Here's a pack of smokes. I was that person too, because I'm like, my parents were like, we'll make sure you can get cigarettes. We'll make sure you can get basic. Yep. And they took care of it because that was my first time. So I get
exactly
the first time
thing
with
parents. Difference. Treatment's real different from the first and the last. This shit's so fucking humbling. So I, I go through 28 days. So I have 2 days left of inpatient, right? And also the biggest difference I noticed internally was, now I was still very, very sick, but I wasn't having fun in treatment. I wasn't laughing and making friends the way I did in the past. And I'm a very like bubbly, like I'm friends with everybody. I'm fucking sitting on the couch in detox, making friends. And this time I'm literally the girl like in the corridor, not talking to anybody, like genuinely torn to the fucking ground for the first time. And more than anything else, fearful, fucking terrified for everything, for my life, my freedom, my daughter, everything, terrified, which was new for me. I was never that scared before. And so I go through 28 days. I have 2 days left and I'm starting to feel better, right? I had everything set up to move into a sober living here in the city of Pittsburgh for when I'm done, because I literally had nowhere else to go. I didn't have a choice to go back to my parents this time. I had nowhere to go, which was good for me. So I had everything set up. I'm starting to feel better. I'm ready to get back out there, start a new life. Like I said, I had 2 days left. They do mail call. My name is called. And I'm like, is there another Abby? There's no way. There's no way that I'm getting mail. Nobody's sending me shit. And they're like, no, Abby Fickley, this is for you. I'm like, all right. Obviously saved it. So 3 pages typed. I had no idea what to expect. Obviously, when I got this, to be honest, I didn't expect this. I thought it was at least going to be like, kind of like, I hope you're doing well. Not at all. Not in the slightest.
Here's a little cash.
Right. So it's basically, this entire letter is basically a boundary. It's basically like, we have given so much of our time, energy, love, care, concern, everything to you. And because of that, my brother and sister lacked some, like they were, it was affecting them. Right. And at this time, my sister had just gotten married. They were trying to get pregnant. Like there were big things happening in my sister's life. And sadly, a lot of it was put on the back burner because here's me, like just running mucks and everybody being afraid every night that I was going to die. I remember when I made amends to my sister once I finally did the steps. I remember her telling me that the hardest part for her was having to mourn the death of me, even though I was still alive. Like she was just so tired of worrying that she just finally had to mourn my death and prepare herself for it, which was heartbreaking. And that's something that you don't forget. But anyways, so This is all just about, they took me off their health insurance. They thought I was doing good so many times. Every time it was a lie. So, like, for instance, here, judging by the dates of the checks that you cashed, you must have relapsed not long after returning home from California. So, while all of this commitment and hard work that went into helping you reestablish your life was underway, you began at some point using again. I'm gonna try not to cry. This is my dad. I was your biggest advocate. While other members of the family were skeptical, I went to bat for you over and over again. I trusted you and I put my faith in you, and you broke my heart because it was all an illusion. You had fallen back into the same situation once again, lying, cheating, and stealing from those who love you more than you will ever know. It hits just the same. It's crazy. That's why I kept this. And then it says, so now, Abby, I am sorry to say that you are on your own completely. We will no longer enable you, help you, or assist you in any way. We can't. We are broken. The disruption, chaos, and despair that you have brought to this family can no longer be tolerated. We no longer have the strength to help you. I no longer have the heart to help you. I wish it hadn't had to come to this, but here we are. This is our new reality. We no longer believe in, this is horrible. We no longer believe in you or your ability to overcome this addiction. I hope we are wrong, but you have only shown us time after time that you cannot or are not willing to change your behavior. So this entire thing is things like that paragraph. Like, it's not only a boundary, it's fucked up. And I'm not mad at my father. I don't resent my father. Like, when I tell this story a lot, I always get people that are like, I would never speak to my father again. And obviously those are like people that don't get it, right? Like, I truly don't resent my father. And what ended up coming of this letter, he saved my life. So whether he was a bit harsh or not, I needed it.
It's what he didn't do yet.
Exactly.
When you get to that point, you have to
left.
pull out all the stops. Like, well, we can't give her love because that didn't work. We can't give her money because that didn't work. We can't give her treatment. We can't give her this because none of that is working.
Literally.
I have to just, it almost sounds like he went to an Al-Anon meeting.
I think
they were like, this is what you need to do, bro.
I agree with you.
Write a letter and send it to her, but wait until she's almost done treatment so she doesn't freak out and leave.
Or leave. Yes, exactly. And that's my theory. Never found out for sure, though.
That's definitely my theory.
No, for sure. And I know they've gone to Al-Anon, but I don't know if if Al-Anon is what initiated this, but I'm assuming it did.
Al-Anon is amazing, even when you're in sobriety and when you get years under your belt. Al-Anon, especially when you recover out loud like we do, Al-Anon is so crucial that, because we don't even realize it, but we're being disappointed by addicts every day.
Every day. Helping
just
them,
like
sponsoring them, having platforms, podcasts. Absolutely. Al-Anon is so important. I tell people that all the time, whether it's,
they're like, oh, I'm the addict. Girlfriend. I'm like, no, but you don't get it.
Yes, exactly. Some addicts don't realize that it's helpful for us, especially in sobriety. I agree with you. Yeah. So now the crucial part of this letter, what changed my entire life, because again, I'm one of those addicts, like, this is the type of shit I need. Somebody can't hold my hand and say it's going to be okay. That's not going to get me sober. I need somebody to scare the living fucking shit out of me. I need to be absolutely terrified to the point where I'm willing to put in the work, get a sponsor, work a program, do service work, have a home group. Like, I have to be scared shitless. And that's something that I learned the hard way, obviously. Like, it goes so much deeper than, oh, I have to learn through experience. You could tell me, don't touch a hot stove. I'm going to touch it anyway. It is like that times 1,000. You know what I mean? So here's where this letter got intense and where I really got scared. Every other piece of it was heartbreaking. Now, this is where I stopped crying while reading this. When I read this part, the tears stopped because I went from being sad to being fucking scared. And so he writes here, I want to let you know, and this is after he gave me that ultimatum. I want to let you know that with a great deal of sadness, I filed charges against you from stealing from us. You forged over 30 checks in over 6 weeks or so. And then the amount is written there. All this while we paid your rent, your car payment, your phone bill, which again, this is another reason why I wasn't getting sober. Your phone bill, we gave you money for daily expenses until you got on your feet. I have to do things on my own. I learned that the hard way, to appreciate them and to be grateful for them. I can't have shit handed to me. Even today, like I cannot accept money. Like it's hard. It gets easier now, and it's something like I'm working on, and I am financially independent, but I'm like afraid to like accept favors from people. I'm so afraid because I know how I am. We bought you furniture for your house. We gave you our time, money, energy. You betrayed us. This wound is a deep one, and I don't know if or when it will ever be healed. And it's not about the money. It's about you and your lack of morality to steal from those helping you. I am sick about it. Yeah, and then it just goes on. I can't believe you would betray us like this. We have also taken you off of our health insurance plan. You will be on your own to establish some sort of health care. Your car is repaired because, of course, I wrecked it right before I went into rehab with an outstanding balance. I'm not paying it, so you can either sell it. If you can sell your car, I would do that, because if not, your car is going to get repossessed. So I'm finding all this out fucking 2 days before I graduate rehab, right? Like, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to get out there. And then I find out that I'm facing 32 counts of forgery, identity theft, and theft by unlawful taking, which was a minimum of 7 years in prison. And that my car is most likely getting repossessed. So this, obviously, that hit me like a train of fucking bricks. But I'm convinced that the reason I'm not only alive, but sober and thriving today is because my father went through with those charges. I believe with everything in me that if he would not have pressed those charges,
you would have got away with it. Where's the lesson?
Yeah.
What was your lesson? 30 days in rehab?
Exactly.
You can do that in my sleep, literally.
Before. Yeah, it's like a vacation. They feed me. Tell me when to go to bed. Like, exactly. So, I'm convinced. People disagree. People think I should, whatever. Everybody has their opinion. But I had to put in the work. I had to be held accountable for once. So.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
At 28 days, though, before you open that letter and know you're getting out in a couple days, did you have any reservations? As in a reservation, like, to get, I'm going to get, yeah.
Kind of. It wasn't so
it's not
much.
A bad thing if you did. It's just.
No,
if anything, it's good.
I'm going to explain it. Actually, I shouldn't say kind of, because the answer is yes. I had reservations, and it was to use substances that wouldn't pop on a drug test. Put it that way. Like, I was going to abuse things the drugs that I learned about when I first went to treatment, if that makes any sense at all. Things that I knew made me feel good, but weren't going to pop on a drug test. Things like that. So I had a full plan of how I was going to like live this new life, because I truly did want to get better. I wanted to change, but I wanted to take the easy way. I wanted to still, yes, I had reservations. I did. Even today, even just then, like justifying certain things, like I did. So this obviously changed that big time. Because again, I was scared. And I always tell people this too, like, that want to get clean. Fear was like my number one motivator. Like, that's what I needed to want to turn my life around and to actually do this. It was fear. Like, I could be sad. I could be depressed. And of course, this is probably different for everybody, but just, I don't know, looking back and learning and through all my experiences, for me, I had to be fucking scared. I mean, I know why. That enough.
I have a theory of why for you.
Yeah.
It's because you weren't afraid before. So you knew what was going to happen. Yeah. You knew that you were going to be safe. You knew that you would have backup plans. You knew that you were financially safe
somewhere
as well.
I could sleep.
Fear is not knowing what's going to happen.
Yep. And I was on my own for the first time in 22 years. I was because at this point I was 24. Yeah, I was 24 at this point.
You can be 90 and still have fear.
Yeah.
It's the unknown. Absolutely. Whenever you don't know what's on the other side of that door, I always equate it to, like, everyone's seen Home Alone, right? Yeah. We're always afraid of our imaginations, because think of Home Alone, the first one. He's afraid to go into the basement because the furnace is a monster. Right. Every time he thinks of the furnace, it's a giant monster. It wasn't until he had to go down there anyway because nobody else was home.
Yeah.
And then he saw it, and he was like, oh. And then it started turned into a monster, and he was like, shut up. And it went away because he was shutting up his own imagination that was telling him that's what it does.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, it was most definitely the first time in my life I was ever like, oh my God, it's up to me. Like, if I'm going to have a warm place to sleep at night, it's up to me. If I'm going to have food to eat, it's up to me.
You don't know if you're going to walk out and get put in cuffs.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I didn't. I truly didn't. And I remember right after reading this letter, the first thing I did was walk up to every tech. How much time could I serve because of this? Do you think I'm going to go to jail? Am I going to go to prison? Am I going to go to prison? Like, that's all I cared about was, am I going to go to prison? And then the second thing was, oh my God, my car. Like, I'm not worried about, still so sick. I'm not worried about all the people I've hurt. Am I ever going to get my father back, my family back? No, it's the fucking car. My daughter. It's the material shit. It was the items. It was, but then your freedom. I mean, nothing compares to not knowing if you're going to have your fucking freedom or not. And that's another thing that I talk about a lot, because that experience alone did so much for me when it came to my relationship with God, my ability to let things go and give them to God, my ability to trust in God. Because so I get out of treatment, I go to the sober living, and this court case, obviously it was going to take a while. It ended up taking over a year to totally work itself out.
And plus, when you're in treatment anyway, they can't really, do much.
They
usually.
can, but in sober living they could, because this
was sober living, you're out of.
It wasn't a halfway, it was a 3/4. Yeah, so I wasn't under, like, I had my phone, I could,
When you're in intake and detox and inpatient, they won't touch you, but if you're in sober living, they will.
Exactly, they could cuff you the moment you get out of rehab. Yep. I've had it happen to a couple of my friends actually, but yeah, so I get out and I go to this sober living, and I have to pay rent every month. It was a very strict sober living, and I'm forever grateful. It was like, if they find out through the grapevine that, like, you're not calling your sponsor every day, they give you one warning. If you don't start calling your sponsor every day, you're kicked out. Like, the littlest thing. So of course you had to get a job within, I think it was like 4 or 6 weeks. You had to have a job, at least a part-time job. You had to pay your rent. You had to do your chores, the whole nine. I had a curfew, all that. So I was in this phase where I was waking up and I was just sick, physically sick every day, just not knowing what was going to happen to me, the fear of the unknown. And so I'm like puking every morning.
Anxiety, throw it
up. Yeah,
up.
the anxiety, but it was all that fear of the unknown. That's always what it boiled down to at this time. And this went on for weeks. And I was starting to go to meetings, and I had gotten a sponsor. And then finally, and this was with the help of my sponsor, I'll never forget the day I woke up and I was on the bathroom floor on my knees, and I just remember I was bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, dude, you know what? No matter what happens to me, no matter how long I go away for, if I go away, what happens, I cannot fucking live like this anymore. I cannot wake up this sick every day. I cannot have this. It was just too heavy. It just got to the point where I was so sick of feeling that way that I didn't even care what was going to happen to me anymore. I had to figure out a way to live my life not knowing what was going to happen to me and be okay with that somehow, some way. And it was in that moment where I looked up and I was like, God, or whatever is up there, I don't know if you hear me. I don't know if you're real. I kind of feel silly right now, but can you fucking take this? Like, I'm willing to put in work. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to do steps. I'm willing to do what these people in the rooms who have these wonderful lives, these people that I look up to, I'm willing to do every fucking thing they tell me to do. If you will please just take this weight that I'm carrying, this unknown fear, what is going to happen to me, just hold it for me and I'll do the rest. And that was literally what I said. And that was kind of the beginning of like a huge turnaround for me. I haven't talked about this stuff in a while. So yeah, I worked the steps with my sponsor. We didn't fucking waste any time. I remember sitting on my 4-step for a while, and I called my sponsor one day and I was like, I'm feeling like really discontent and impatient. Everybody's bothering me. She's like, how's that 4-step coming? And I remember being like, ugh. And that was it. And that was it. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, how is this shit that real? Because I finished my 4-step, sat with her for a couple hours, talked about it, bawled my eyes out because I realized I was the fucking common denominator to everything on my 4-step. It was like,
well, you did it right then, Abby.
Yeah,
you did it right then, because there's so many times I've helped people where I've talked to people and they're like, well, my list was against like my parents or this person or that. I'm like, your list should be 3/4 against yourself. And then guess what? Yes. When you get to 8, 9, you reference that list and then you apologize for that list.
Yep. So yeah, and, those little moments really just made me like, holy shit, these steps are real. This shit is real. Like, I used to tell people, like, you're missing, like, my sober friends or my normie friends, which, you know, what is normal, but my friends who could just drink normally, I'd be like, dude, you could fucking get something out of these steps. Like, anybody could. They were that helpful for me. I wanted to, like, go tell everybody.
I have helped somebody that was
Have
as a
you?
normie
I
in my
believe
meeting
it.
center. She
That's
was
sick.
23 and here for mental health.
I
Like
love
she
that.
was literally here because anxiety and depression and trauma in her past, but never was a drug addict, never was an alcoholic. And I always talked about the steps in our mental health meetings. And she's like, what are they
Yeah,
about?
what
Like, can
are
any
the
of that?
steps?
I'm like, listen, what makes your life unmanageable? And she was like, what? I said, what makes your life unmanageable the most? You don't have to tell me.
Yeah,
But
just think
all it
about
is whatever that is that makes your life unmanageable, replace the word alcohol with that thing that
it.
makes
Yeah.
your life unmanageable and then go through it that way.
Right.
And I let her borrow my Russell Brand book. This way it was more fun for her because like
Yeah.
his book is like, are you fucked and all this stuff. It's funny, you know what I mean? So I let her use that and it was extremely helpful for her. She ended up changing her life. Her and her fiance moved
Oh,
to
that's
like
amazing.
states away from where the trauma was and like she's very happy now.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
I
I
know
love
for a
hearing
fact
that it was beneficial for somebody. That's really cool because I've never had the pleasure of taking anybody through the
it's
steps.
about what you have to do is what I've learned is ask them what makes their life unmanageable because if you
Yeah,
ask
I
any
like
if
that.
you ask any normie what the first step is, they're going to say admitting it's the first step,
Right.
and it's not, and it kind of is, but really it's that semicolon. It's my life was unmanageable,
Right. Right. Well, and it's admitting that, you know, whatever it is that's unmanageable is out of your control, right? Like,
powerless.
you don't have power over it.
Those
And
are the
so,
big two words, in my opinion, the first step that everyone forgets. They're like, no, it's just you admitting it. It's like, no, I'm powerless and
it's
I'm
the
unmanageable.
powerlessness. Yes.
That's what makes it
Yep.
important. And the people that do steps right, they write a list of all the ways their life is unmanageable.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not doing that
Yeah.
list and you're just like breezing over step one, get ready to do that shit again.
Absolutely. There's so much detail. And even
Yeah.
like I've worked the steps I worked the steps twice, like with
Like
myself.
thoroughly, yeah.
Thoroughly. And then, you know, that's the other cool thing about sponsoring people and taking other people through the steps. You
Through
learn
them
more
each time.
each time. Yes, new things, even about myself sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm helping somebody else. And that's the cool thing about it. You know, you never stop learning. You never stop. I don't ever want to stop learning. That's like one of my biggest prayers is, you know, I always want to change. I want to continue evolving, continue growing. I want my opinions to change. And, you know, I mean, it's
okay to change. People get so butthurt about change. Like the most beautiful things come from change. Like I hate to be so cliche, but butterflies.
1000%.
You know what I mean?
So true.
Like,
it's so true.
And life won't like get any better for you by chance. It is only by change. Like literally, it's not just gonna happen.
Yep.
If you're unhappy right now, then change shit.
Radical change. You can't sit around and wait for something nobody else is gonna do.
Like, no, the only reason both of us are sitting right here sober today is because we wanted it. The difference was that day on that bathroom floor, you wanted to be sober and you didn't need to be sober anymore.
No, I really did. And you know what? And I tell people that too, is like, you know, it's okay if it takes an outer something else to get you into treatment, right? Like for me, it was that ultimatum that my dad gave me, which joke was on me, but it's okay if something else gets you in there, but it's you finding something while you're there that keeps you there. So, you know, like for me, yeah, my dad got me in there, but along the way, I started to like the way I felt. Oh my God, I heard a good song. I got goosebumps. I haven't felt goosebumps from a song in fucking years. I just laughed so hard my stomach hurt. When's the last time I laughed so hard my stomach hurt? All those little tiny things that are what makes life so beautiful that I had forgotten about because I was so numb and so dead inside. That's what made me want to keep going, you know? So yes, somebody else pushed me to go there, but thank God I found something. And that's another thing I talk about a lot with moms, because for so many years, especially in California, I made my daughter my reason, right? It's really easy to do that. I got to do this for my daughter. I'm getting sober for my daughter. And anytime I hear somebody say that, I stop them. And it's not necessarily like, no, don't do that. But I make them think
I say
about
why.
it.
I ask why.
Exactly. I make them think about it. Because what happened with me when I set myself up that way, when I couldn't get sober, then what did I do? Made myself feel like a bad mom. Oh, I'm a piece of shit. If I can't even do it for my daughter, well, then I'm useless. I'm hopeless. There's no point. And that's where I started to lead myself, when really it was just, no, I could love her more than anything in the world. I know for a fact I would jump in front of a bus if it meant to save her life. I know that. Does that mean I could get sober for her? Never. Not in a million years. It doesn't mean I don't love my daughter, but I have to want it for me. And it took me years and years to learn that. And that's why I asked them that question, because I don't want them ever to fall into that mom guilt or that shame, like, oh, I'm a bad mom. I must not care about my kid. You know, it goes so much deeper.
I learned it in sober living. I was killing it because I wanted to be there. And my really good friend, she was struggling, and she had just got caught, and failed a drug test. So, it's back to detox you go.
Yep.
And we're sitting outside the sober living, and we're smoking cigarettes, of course. And she just crying, and she just like, I don't understand. I can't get this. Like, I need to do this, and I can't. She kept saying the word need, and and I'm like 35 days sober for the first time in my life at this point. Like, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, why? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, why do you need to be sober? And she's like, well, my parents and my brother and my sister, everyone's disappointed and this, that, and the third. I'm like, oh, see, you keep saying you don't know why it's working for me. It's working and it's not working for you. Is none of my family told me to be here. I want to be here. I want to do this. I want things to be different. And in order for them to be different, I have to stop doing everything I was doing before.
Yep.
And the other thing you remind me of is the laughter. The fucked up thing, Abby, is I was a stand-up comic in addiction.
Really? Oh,
and I forgot how to laugh. I didn't know that, but I would still laugh. I'm not a sociopath. Like, I would be in a club, and I'm a smart enough guy that you said a joke, and I'm like,
yeah, you're right.
And I'm gonna laugh with my
right.
head. I'm gonna say, JD, laugh at that. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't laugh with my stomach until my stomach hurt, until I was like 2-3 weeks in rehab.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's one of those things. And I was like, oh my God, my stomach hurts from laughing.
Yeah.
And that's when it all hit me. Like, you dumb fuck. You weren't feeling anything for 20 years.
I know. Like, I'll never forget. So this is how real this shit is when it comes to all those little emotions and those feelings. I can literally tell you what songs came out when I was that very first time I ever went to rehab in Palm Springs, California. I can literally tell you what songs were just coming out on the radio, because when we would ride in the van to go to like the gym or to a meeting, those songs would come on, and I would literally, this is crazy, but I would get teary-eyed. I'd get emotional, and I would be like, I would have to fight back the tears. And these weren't even like sad songs. It was just, there was so much emotion that was being held back for so long. You know that song, this is so funny, Closer with Halsey and the Chainsmokers, which was huge, obviously. Oh my God, that song came out around that time, I believe, or at least it was on the radio all the time at that time. And I would fucking cry. Just Halsey, it was just her voice. It was just so beautiful.
She has that so raw, like,
she
voice
does.
of like, she's so seen it, she's been there, you can hear the pain in her voice. And I totally get the song for me, and I get this. You're gonna get this Southern California reference to this too, because like, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go to meetings in West Hollywood. You know what I mean? And I'll probably meet cool people. And I did. I met a lot of amazing people, and I kind of mirrored my place out of the West Hollywood Recovery Center that I loved going to so much. That was also a famous singer's home group, Demi Lovato.
Cool.
But guess what, Abby? I got to rehab April 25th, 2018. She came out with a new song a week later called Sober. She relapsed. And not relapsed. She almost died 2 days before I left.
That's crazy.
I was in their meeting.
I was in sober living at that time in Pittsburgh.
I was in their meeting, and on Tuesday night, they have the best meeting on Tuesday night because it's called See You Next Tuesday, and I just love that. Yes. And that was her home group.
So good.
And everybody was bawling. Because not only did she almost die that day, but somebody else from that home group did die that day on his relapse with a year.
That's a lot.
Mac Miller died 2 weeks later.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that one hit me exactly. So like I
went to his memorial. I went to at Blue Slide Park. I was in sober living. I was living in sober living, and me and two of my roommates. the three of us went
It was his
after our
birthday
home group.
yesterday. Everyone knows when we're recording this now. But happy birthday yesterday, Mac up there, because that was his birthday
happy
yesterday.
belated birthday. Happy belated birthday, Mac. We miss you and your music. Yeah,
I
we went
still
to
watch his
Riverside Park.
Tiny Desk NPR all the time.
Hell yeah.
Like, that's one of my favorite Tiny Desk ones that NPR did was with him, because it's so raw and like it's so good. But anyway, we can go on rants with music. I get it. What did you call your vans? Everyone had different names for them in rehabs when I was out there. I heard Dope Fiend Limousine. I heard Druggy Buggy. I heard
I was gonna say, yeah, Druggy Buggy and Dope Fiend Limousine were the biggest ones, and then the third one we used was Ativan, the Ativan.
See, I knew there was gonna be a good one. There's always a bunch of good ones that pop up.
Buggy, Dope Fiend Limousine. Yeah, I'm trying to think, but it was mainly the Ativan.
It sounds well, it sounds like to me the difference was that letter and the steps.
It was, well, above anything else, it was 1,000% the steps. But the letter is what led me to put in the work to actually do the steps. So yes, it was the most pivotal moment in my life in terms of wanting to do this thing for real was the letter. And it was my father pressing those charges. And then what actually, tools wise, it was 1,000% just working a program. And it truly is so simple, simple program for difficult people. It is so true because I overcomplicated it. And I mean, I'm sure you could relate to that, or, a lot of other people in the program. Because once I actually went ahead and did it and just simply did exactly what my sponsor told me to do, even if I didn't think that was because I got to the point where I was like, you know what, clearly nothing that I do is correct. So even when there were moments where I'm like, I don't think that sounds right, I just fucking did it anyways, because at that point I knew it was like, well, what do I know? Look where I've gotten myself. And so, I mean, somebody could have told me to do something so fucking weird or embarrassing, and I would have done it. And I'm going to tell you, this is just a little funny, quick mini story for anybody who has anxiety, because I get this a lot, with my platform. People are too afraid to go to meetings. They say their social anxiety stops them from going to meetings. And I always tell this because this was the most humbling fucking moment of my life in sobriety. So I'm in Pittsburgh, right? It's a, the sober community here. A lot of people know a lot of people, right? And I'm living in sober living. And this was the first day I got out of inpatient. It was a Tuesday because this meeting ended up becoming my home group. And one of the girls that lived there said, hey, do you want to come to a meeting tonight? And I'm like, yeah, I had nothing else to do. I couldn't leave. I was on blackout. Meanwhile, I'm 20 minutes away from where I grew up, and I feel like I'm like literally stranded. I had nobody would answer my phone calls, and so I truly felt like I was so far from everybody, and I wasn't. So here I am on this blackout period, can't go anywhere, can't do anything. So of course, I wanted to go to a meeting, and she said, there's a girl coming to pick a few of us up. You can ride with us. And I'm like, okay, great, because I didn't have my car. This girl pulls up to the sober living. There's three of us. We're getting in the car, and she rolls down her window, the girl driving. She goes, shit. She's like, I don't have enough seats. And the issue was her kid's car seat was in the back, and she couldn't take it out. So me being the smallest one, they're like, just sit in the car seat. It's a 3-minute ride up the road, whatever. So I'm the new girl, okay, showing up to this meeting. We pull up, everybody is outside smoking. So everybody's watching us pull in.
I hated
They open all the doors. When I tell you 30 fucking people smoking cigarettes, I don't know any of these motherfuckers yet, are watching me open this car door and jump out of a fucking car seat, not even 30 days sober, looking fucking rough in every way you can imagine. So when somebody tells me they're too fucking scared to go into a meeting, please remember the moment or the story of me hopping out of a toddler's, not even like a booster seat. This was like a car seat. This was like the kind that you could still put like the baby carrier in. Oh my God. And you know what? We made that became an inside joke with my home group for a long time. Abby's, grand appearance to the meetings called, jump out of a car seat. So anyway, I don't know.
I've heard the theory that like we stop maturing at a certain age and we are using, but I didn't think you'd have to really go that far, Abby, to get out of a fucking.
Yeah. How about that analogy? Yeah, I was reborn, in every way.
The faith-based ones didn't work for me, but here I am.
So yeah, oh my God, when somebody's like, well, I'm scared, I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Try hopping out in a fucking car seat because you have no other choice.
Yeah,
So,
and
anyway,
well, you know what you say to those people is you say of what, you say scared of what, and then their response 9 out of 10 times is I don't know, and then every
it's
time they
usually
say yep, every time they say I don't know, it's like, well, that's very common because that's what fear is things you don't know, but you see that I'm happy, right? Well, yeah, well, I go to this meeting and it gives me joy. Like
Yes.
my regular was I don't know how far like in the LA you went ever. But I went on the
Not
I was
too
on the west
often.
I was on the west side, like Venice, like Santa
Okay.
Monica,
Yeah.
and Marina Del Rey, because
Okay.
Marina Center holds 5-6 meetings a day, including 11 p.m. And
Oh, no.
I got permission from my, to break curfew every single day to go to that meeting.
Okay. Got it.
And it saved me so much because I finally, and this struggle too. So like I finally could be at a real meeting finally with people my age that weren't in rehab. Because when you go to a 7,
you feel
8
like an
p.m.
adult.
meeting in Southern California, all the limousines pull up,
I was gonna
and
say
then
it's all druggy buggies in the parking
yep,
lot.
and everybody your age are just as sober as you with 30,
Yep.
But at this
it's
late
so
night meeting was people in their mid to late 20s, early
who
30s,
had
like I was,
lives and jobs and
who had jobs and who
you
were
looked up
people
to them.
already,
You wanted
and
to be like,
they just wanted to end their day with that 11 o'clock meeting.
Yes.
It was by candlelight. We had strung lights
I love
around.
candlelight.
And it was so raw. There would be crosstalk. They'd be yelling at each other. I fucking loved it.
Yep, I I haven't been to a candlelight meeting since I lived in California. Actually,
Exactly.
I forgot about them.
Yeah, I do them. I do them here out of like just
that's so
pure
awesome.
like. But then again, I read How It Works here because I'm so used to that tradition.
Yes.
Like I was so butthurt when I got to Hershey, and they're like, "No, we don't read How It Works here." I'm like, "What? It's a tradition, isn't it?" They're like, and then I'm like, "It's a Southern California." I'm like thinking of the preamble in my head, and I'm like, "Oh, it's a Southern California tradition," because I'm hearing the preamble because I used to speak it all. I was so excited.
That's interesting. Oh.
Yeah. But then I did find a meeting where I live now in the mountains that they do read How It Works at every meeting.
Yeah, because we read it here too.
Okay, it was definitely that.
I've been to, the ones that I've
Harrisburg, Hershey, Lancaster. Well, no, Lancaster didn't either. It was further down. I found a meeting an hour from my house when I got back that I would go to 3 times a week because I figure if I was driving 2 hours to get high, I should drive an hour to get sober.
Yep.
And I did that for like 6 months.
Okay.
And then you stop, and then you relapse eventually, like I did, because when you stop going to meetings and you stop connecting with people, then you start talking yourself into shit. And I relapsed with alcohol because I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a pill addict.
Exactly.
I even poured the first 2 out before I drank the rest of the 6-pack to prove to myself I could pour out a drink. It's like, no, you fucking asshole. You should have poured them out at the end, not at the beginning. Anyone can pour the first 2 out. Pour those last 2 out, bitch. You know what I mean? Like yelling at myself. I was doing the steps, like, like,
oh yeah.
It didn't change anything. It was so nice meeting you and talking to you more.
Oh my God, yes.
We have so much in common. It is.
We do.
Ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It's so funny whenever I do this, and you never think you're gonna have anything. Well, actually, that's not true. I always know I'm gonna have something in common because, like, I specifically try to find ways. Like you said earlier with the relating, right? The relating in and relating out.
Yeah, you choose. You want to look at the similarities or the differences because you're going to find them.
Yep, and that's why I ask questions like, do you have any siblings? And are your parents together? Because I want the audience to go, oh, I'm the youngest. Oh, my parents are still together. And then want to relate to you the rest of the way.
Yeah, it draws people in. No, for sure. I mean, the moment
I related out. When you relate out to meetings, you're at the fucking lunch. You're not hearing a word that's being said.
That was the moment I walked into detox the very first time I went to rehab. I instantly, the first not even 5 minutes, I was like, I don't belong here. Yeah. And from there it was every single thing. It wasn't, oh, we have this in common, which I could have found that if that's what I was looking for, but I wasn't. It was, I had already set the stage for.
And that's what changed me is like sitting in a meeting and hearing myself speak from the podium and not even realize I wasn't even paying attention. Like I was and I wasn't, because at the time I wasn't. It was the first like week and a half, right? And then like I was sitting there at an 8 p.m. meeting at Marina, And I hear, he ended up being a really good friend and mentor, not a sponsor, but I consider him like a mentor from the
Yeah.
late night meetings. But he was speaking. He's got Nikolai. And everything he said, I was like, oh, that's like me. Oh, shit, that's like me too. Oh, wait, he was on pills and he can talk about that in AA?
Yeah. It makes
You know what I mean? Like,
it's so
that
nice.
blew my mind when he was talking about pills in AA.
Yeah.
I was like, I can talk about that here?
Yes.
I'm in the right spot? And
you feel like you're not singled out or alone.
Yep. And as
I
soon
know,
as you
I
flip that
appreciate that
switch
too.
to wanting it and not needing it, it's off to the races
Oh my
because
God, yeah.
we start chasing that. We start obsessing over sobriety like we obsess over drugs.
Exactly. Yeah, we have the same tendencies.
Look at us now.
Take the drugs out. I know. You take the drugs out. The problem's still there. The drugs were the solution.
I always say
We're
that
the
word for
problem.
word. I always word for word say that.
It's just so true.
Yeah.
I mean, you take all the drugs away and there's just one big giant issue that still needs a whole lot of work. And that,
Yep.
I mean, just because you take away the drugs doesn't mean people have changed. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But yeah.
What's your TikTok for anybody listening or watching?
What's my what? Oh, my
TikTok.
I keep it all real simple. All my handles are Abby Fickley. That's my first and last name. So my TikTok is Abby Fickley. My Instagram is Abby Fickley. And those are really the two main places you can find me.
Abby with an E. Abby,
yes, Abbey
Road. I
was named after Abbey Road. My dad is
no
a
shit.
Beatles fan. Yeah, so ABBEY.
I have Let It
No
Be
way.
right there.
Oh my God.
That was my third step.
Oh,
that was my third step.
on it.
I was refusing to say let go, let God. So I told my sponsor I would get Let It Be tattooed on me to prove how much I want it, but I wouldn't say the word God. And
You're lying. You went that far.
I swear to God. Yeah. I went to a graffiti artist the next day who I met in AA, and I said, hey, you do amateur tattoos in your front yard in Venice, right? She's like, yeah. I was like, I need Let It Be for my third step. She was come by tomorrow. And then she did my entire arms while I was out there. We would do AA meetings.
So can I ask how you feel about let go and let God today then?
I'm a lot better with it. I just don't use the word God.
Yeah, which is cool.
Bill Mary's my higher power. That's why he's over my shoulder as Jesus.
Well, can I tell you my higher power is? It's Larry David.
Oh my God.
He's my best friend.
I was just watching Seinfeld before we got on this episode.
Were you really? Oh,
yes,
Curb,
of course I was. Oh, Curb is my shit.
Listen, I'll take either one, but Curb's my favorite.
I love Curb.
People have such a fear of the freaking the religion. And I always tell people that you don't have to be religious. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Make Bill your Murray, higher power whatever you want.
Bill Murray. Yep.
Bill Murray. I love it. Bill Murray.
My friend that did all my tattoos, I'm like, hey, can you paint that for me? Can you paint Jesus? You? Yeah. Yeah, she's painted a lot for me. That's also her bunnies right there. The bunnies that are humping right there.
Cute. Love it.
Those are muck bunnies. She's very famous in LA. Muck Rock is her like tag. Yeah, it's on the west side, but like now she's in San Pedro.
Okay.
She just bought a house in San Pedro, and she's a full-time muralist. So
wow, that's sick.
That's how good of a muralist she is that she could buy a house in San Pedro.
No, honest to God, I know that's the first thing. Like, you must be doing well.
Yeah, I want to run some names by you actually in a second. I'm gonna say. Well, thanks again, and I'm gonna.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.